Welcome, I'm Paul, this is Dave. Today I have 16 Glitch in the Matrix and paranormal stories for you. My favorite one involves something blue. Let's get to it. Case file number 3200, written by Flashy Turnip 5146. Aisle 6 went silent. I was in the grocery store last Saturday. Super busy night, as it was dinner time. I had 3 items to get. I was walking on the backside of the aisles. Our self-checkout is at the beginning of aisle 6, the egg and cheese aisle. I get my 3 items and proceed to walk down aisle 6. I see that the line for self-checkout is halfway down the aisle. Multiple people back to back, standing in line. I can tell every register at self-checkout is full. I decided I'm going to check the regular lines to see if there are any shorter. I walk up aisle 7 to do so. The lines were no better. I thought in that moment, no way, I'd rather wait in the self-checkout. I turn around to go back down aisle 6. Here's the kicker. Everyone was gone. No one, not a soul in sight. No one in line, no one else in the aisle at all. Feeling like I was slightly crazy, I turned and did a 360 in the middle of the store. Literally like, where did everyone go? I was able to walk right into self-checkout and pay. There is no way that another register was opened in the 10 seconds it took for me to walk to the front. No other lanes were open. There is no way all those people cleared out before I could walk to the front. I was extremely confused and still am. Everyone I talk to about it just doesn't think it's as crazy as I do. So if we think about it, what is a glitch? A glitch, in my opinion, is an error in the simulation, one that isn't immediately corrected. I think they're constantly correcting themselves, but sometimes some slip through and we notice them. And I think in this case, there's dead pocket servers where people are transferred temporarily to, I think, before moving to a different universe. I think maybe that happened to you, or maybe it was just an accidental error and you were moved or aware of that dead pocket server before being brought back. Because it happened so suddenly and quickly, I think that's probably just an error. Case file number 3201, written by Bezman8. Faith, Fear, and Fluorescents. When I was 13, one gloomy Sunday after a church service, my mom stayed back to talk to the minister. After a while, the whole church cleared out and it was just me, my mom, and the minister. It didn't seem like the conversation was ending, so I went to the other side of the church to shoot some hoops in the gymnasium. Most of the lights throughout the building had already been shut off. The only thing lighting the gym was a small skylight, so it was fairly dim. In one poorly lit corner of the gym was a locked storeroom. I'd only seen it opened a few times before, but never really had a good look inside. It felt mysterious to me, and I always was wary of it, especially when I was alone. I was shooting hoops for some time, but every now and then I looked back at the door to make sure the portal to hell hadn't opened. Sure enough, at one point I heard a creak. I turned my head to see the door opening gradually outwards, revealing its black interior. My blood ran cold, and then I heard a deep, slow, throaty laugh from within. Ho, ho, ho. I instantly dropped the basketball. My own balls retreated, and I ran for the exit. I reached my mom and the minister, heart racing, but I was too flustered to say anything. My mom didn't notice my condition, and shortly after we left, I didn't pay any glances back towards the gym. I didn't tell anyone about it for over a decade, thinking I wouldn't be believed or talking about it would draw too much attention to it. I don't think I ever went back to the gym alone, nor ever saw the door open again. Anyway, 17 years later, I no longer believe in the paranormal, but I still think back on this and try to rationalize it. The obvious theory is that the door was just not properly locked, and it eventually released at one point and slowly drifted open. I then perhaps misinterpreted that sound as an evil laugh, but at the same time, it didn't sound like an artificial laugh. It sounded straight from a cliché horror movie. In my brain, it's still such a fearful memory that plays every now and then. I'll never shake it. Case file number 3202, written by Mentally Recovering. White Light, Black Road. I work at 5 a.m., so I left the house at 4:30 a.m., and it's obviously dark. I'm going about my merry way when I come upon a semi-truck in front of me. This semi-truck did not have a trailer. I could tell it didn't because I saw the lights on the bottom of the hitch part. I am behind them a while, again they have no trailer, when I decided to pass them. I switch into the left lane, speed up, and get beside them. All of a sudden, there is a white trailer with lights on the side of it. A whole trailer just appeared. I am so confused because when I was behind the semi-truck, I saw black nothing and the lights on the bottom of the hitch. I'm obviously so confused, but continue to pass them and get in front of them. They were in my rearview mirror the whole time, and I'm sure it was the same truck, because our vehicles were the only two on the road at 4:30 a.m. A few miles down the road, I need to switch to the exit lane on the right side and slow down to 45 miles per hour. Again, the truck I just passed was still in my rearview mirror. While I'm slowing down, the semi passes me on my left, and again, there is a white trailer with lights on the side. However, when it was in front of me, the trailer part was in front so the truck had fully passed me, the trailer disappeared, and I saw nothing but black and the lights on the bottom of the hitch part. How could I miss a white trailer? I'm convinced it was either a glitch or I'm losing my mind. I will add I get up and on the road at 4:30 a.m. regularly for my job, so I wasn't sleep deprived. Case file number 3203, written by Lil Beams, The Stranger in Atlanta. In 1987, my wife and I were living in Raleigh, North Carolina, but I was temporarily living in Atlanta, Georgia for a few months, working on a contract. The whole region was going through a severe drought at the time. Everything was brown and the lawns were dying. When I spoke to my wife that day, by phone, she told me they'd had a huge rainstorm in Raleigh that dumped many inches of rain. Okay, good news for my lawn, but I didn't think much more about it. Later that day, I went to meet some coworkers at a local restaurant, and as I walked into the restaurant, a man I'd never seen before smiled and said, "Wish it would rain like that on my lawn," as he walked past. When the shock of what he said just hit me, I turned to ask him how he knew about that conversation, but he was already gone. To this day, I have no idea who he was or how he could have known about my conversation with my wife. I've always been skeptical of clairvoyance, but that's the only explanation I can come up with. So yeah, there are people I think who possess the ability to just look at a person and absorb information from their past lives. Maybe recent information, and it's all happening subconsciously. That could apply in this case. Or you just have government agents that are spying on you, and for some reason they were teasing you, taunting you. I don't know. Are you that important? I wonder. Case file number 3204, written by individual ad 869. Drinks in the back. My best friend, female 19, and I, female 19 too, decided to go to this antique shop before heading home. We walk in and what I'm assuming to be the owner, male in his 60s, tells us there are drinks in the back, and we're like, okay, cool. A little odd, but we start looking around. We get to this one corner, and the hair on the back of my head stands up. This has never happened before, and she doesn't tell me till after we left, but that's about the point. Her stomach drops too. We keep looking around and get to this one glass case by the checkout desk, and the older guy tells us we can open it. So I start to, and he just spawns behind us and opens it. My friend is standing in front of it, and I'm behind her to the side. The dude stays standing directly behind us, close enough to feel his breath. I try to stand between them and get her to move. He finally steps back a bit, and we keep walking deeper into the store. My hair still feels uncomfortable, but I ignore it, thinking I'm just cold. We're walking down this hallway, and she tells me to look back discreetly, and this man is staring us down in his chair with a really uncomfortable gaze in his eyes. We brush it off and enter one of the back rooms. I'm looking at some stuff, and my best friend says, "We need to leave now." She feels super uncomfortable, and that something's wrong. When I looked at her, I could tell immediately this wasn't a joke. While we were trying to leave, this guy asked if we were leaving so soon, and we dipped. While we were getting in the car, he was staring at us through the window. On the way back, I told her about how my hair was feeling uncomfortable, and she told me her stomach dropped at around the same time. Talked about the weird things and thought about how weird it was that our feelings got stronger the closer we got to where they were keeping the drinks. Glad to now know what my instincts feel like physically for the future. Yeah, so you just trusted your gut, you and your friend, and hey, I always say trust your gut, and it's important. I think our guts carry so much information just of the mundane realm, the subconscious picking up on things that aren't quite right. And it's not always correct. Maybe this guy just didn't have, hesitism and doesn't understand social cues and all that. Possible. Maybe he didn't have anything nefarious planned, but better safe than sorry. You don't have to be rude to him, just if you're uncomfortable, leave. Well done. Case file number 3205, written by Lion in School. The rainbow above the school. It was 3 a.m., and I was driving to my local Whataburger. As I was driving, I realized I had forgotten my wallet at home. Literally no one else was on the road when I was driving back. I do this all the time. It was literally routine driving back to my house to pick up my wallet. Luckily, no one else was on the road, so it was a quick drive back home. As I was driving back, I saw huge beams of light at a house about 5 minutes from where I live. It's right in front of the school, and all the lights near the school were brighter than usual. I pulled over to the lights, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I saw it for a few seconds, maybe even less. My peripheral vision was blocked. All I could focus on was a huge metal object with rainbow colors and something moving in the middle. Some kind of black blob for 2 never-ending seconds. Right after I took that glance, it was gone. Even though it felt like forever, all I saw was a blink in the sky, and hell, maybe even that didn't happen. All I know is that it was gone, and the weirdest part of all was I was sweating like crazy when it was over. My eyes were bloodshot, my back was drenched, and I was hyperventilating like crazy. I felt like I was being watched and that I wasn't safe. I quickly drove, speeding like a mother fricker, and when I got out of the car, I threw up for about 2 minutes straight. As I was about to walk into my house, I looked over 2 acres of land right across from my house and saw an 8-foot stick figure just standing there, making a horrible sound. I then quietly grunted or screamed, not knowing what the fluck was happening to me. Thought I was gonna die. My anxiety and panic was through the roof, as all of this felt so fucking real it wasn't even funny. And to this day, I still think it was real, even though it isn't. It can't be. The weirdest part was, as I saw that stick figure, my cat was outside too, eyes bloodshot similar to mine. Right after that event, I woke up on my bed, drenched in sweat with vomit all around me. I looked outside and apparently it was 8 in the morning. I guess I had slept all night and just had a bad, vivid dream? But the weird part was I don't remember going to bed that night. I could have sworn I did stay up late and went to Whataburger. Whatever the case, that was the worst day of my life, and I hope to never relive something like that again. And no, I don't do drugs. Okay, so I don't want to break the illusion because it's a useful defense mechanism of the subconscious, but I think this was an alien abduction. I think there's different kinds of aliens here, but I don't think they mean us harm in the way that most other people would think. If they wanted to wipe us out, we'd be gone. They're probably just studying us, and they typically return us after. Not that it's okay, but thinking of how we treat zoo animals or animals that we use in laboratories to test new drugs or stuff like that are often severely harmed or killed. I don't think they treat us that bad, so that's something, right? But yeah, in this case, I think it's just your subconscious framing it as a dream to protect you. And, that's all I can say. I'm just going to be honest about that. I guess that's probably the best advice, just to go about your life believing it's a dream. Yeah, probably what I would try to do. Case file number 3206, written by Mother Ducker 12, The Doppelgängers of Campus Road. Once, I was getting a ride back to my college campus from a coworker and had plans to meet with my friend and her boyfriend, both of whom I'd seen earlier that day. Driving back, it was pretty dark out, but I know I 100% saw them walking towards campus on the sidewalk. They were holding hands, one was wearing the same white sweater as my friend, and the other the same baseball cap as her boyfriend. They'd both been off campus and coming to meet me, so I was sure it was them walking, and I almost asked my coworker to just drop me off there and I'd walk with them. But we were all so close to campus I figured I'd wait. So I got dropped off and waited, and waited, and waited. But not a single person, and especially no couple, walked by me on the sidewalk. There really wasn't anywhere else for them to go with them walking in that direction, but I just didn't see anyone. I called my friend to ask where they dipped off to. I'd just seen them walking, and she told me they were on the complete opposite end of the campus as they had been, and were on their way to meet me. They arrive, and lo and behold, they're in that exact same white sweater and baseball cap I saw earlier. Case file number 3207, written by Sugar Bombs, Candles in the Rust. A long time ago, me and my mom moved into a newly built home. It was near this abandoned block of houses that had all been bought up by a developer to be torn down and with a bunch of McMansions built over it, but for whatever reason the work never started and there was just a small area full of abandoned houses and a few little old farms. Me and my friends loved exploring around that area, but there was this one really old house with a huge barn that we could cut through to really easily because it backed into a national park and the fence had fallen down. We'd been there a few times, specifically the barn, which had an old rusted tractor and a few various totally rusted tools. Normal abandoned barn stuff. So one day, we decided to go walk by again, and we cut through to the barn and inside, everything had been cleared except for this gorgeous dining table that was all set. All the plates and cutlery were fancy looking and placed perfectly. There were napkins and flowers, even pitchers for drinks and candles. It was just so strange to see a half-falling down old shed on an abandoned property with the table ready for fine dining. I still think of it years later, just who cleared out the barn just to set that up and why. I don't think this is anything supernatural. I think it's just probably a young teenager or a young adult that wanted to set up a romantic date that was novel, something unique, and so found an abandoned place and set up a nice fine dining experience. Now, where was the food? I mean, maybe he went back to his car somewhere nearby to get it and get his date, blindfold her and bring her and surprise. Pretty cool. That's most likely what happened, because it's something I would do. Case file number 3208, written by Chocolate Cow 1, What the Police Couldn't Find. I used to live by myself out of town on a property. It was a big house with multiple rooms, and if you didn't live there, you wouldn't know what room was what. I didn't have an internet connection and had to stay in town for 2 days and nights to study and submit my assessments, etc. On the morning I came home, I went to unlock my front door. It was already unlocked? Suspicious. I went into investigation mode immediately. I know I locked my door when I left, but there were no signs of a break-in or tampering with the lock. I took a huge break and went inside. I immediately discovered muddy boot prints leading from the front door straight into my bedroom, stopping beside the head of my bed, leading straight out down the hallway to the back glass sliding door. No other prints in the house. Whoever this was wasn't confused about where they were going. The boot prints were large. The person had to be at least 6 foot tall. I'm a 5'4" woman and 21 at the time. I called the police and they came and did a sweep for prints and such, but ultimately said they couldn't do anything because no prints were found, no sign of a break-in, and nothing was stolen. To this day, I still don't know who broke into my house or why they went straight to my bedroom and left. A few months later, someone was spotted in my yard out the back where I had my little birdie. My friend who was helping me pack saw them and immediately ran after them, but they escaped somehow. Whoever it was had killed my bird while I was in the process of packing and moving. Police still wouldn't do anything. Case file number 3209, written by Marga Mary, Scanned by the Sky. When I was in my early 20s, I was lying on the beach at night with a friend. We were right at the edge of the water, looking up at the night sky. It was pitch black. We were both sober. Directly overhead, 2 giant white lights somehow opened up like apertures of cameras. From tiny little white dots to these giant round bright lights. I could tell that the lights were from really far away, like maybe where a plane would be, but there was no sound, and they didn't move. They just opened up, seemingly pointing at us. The 2 lights stayed in the same position, and after a little while, they started to slowly move downward in the sky while maintaining the exact same amount of space in between them, as though they were attached to the same thing, or I don't know, at least acting in unison. After about 5 to 10 seconds of them slowly moving downward in the sky, then they suddenly stopped again and just stayed in the exact same position. After about another 10 seconds, then, the lights slowly closed from the big white blinding white lights to little tiny holes that closed and disappeared. No sound, just there and nothing. I held my breath the entire time it was happening, and for probably another 20 seconds after they disappeared. When I finally let out my breath, I barely squeaked out a whisper. "Did you see that too?" And of course my friend saw it too, and we started freaking out. Not scared, but just in awe of what had happened. I didn't feel anything, and I didn't sense anything bad, but it was kind of like we were being scanned or observed in some way. I will absolutely never forget a single shred of that experience. Case file 3210, written by S.H. Stain, The Winter Visitor. Winter in rural Ontario. Watching a movie with my uncle and cousin. Went out to get some firewood. It felt odd as soon as I stepped outside. We hadn't started the snow machines yet, not that year, and it was snowing that night. I grabbed a couple pieces of wood, and right on the third piece, I heard a low voice say, "Hello," about 10 feet away in the untouched yard. I dropped the wood and ran back inside. My cousin and uncle are 6'5" and 6'6". They heard me rush in and ask what happened. I told them, and they went out and looked around. Sure enough, there were no tracks anywhere. After the movie ended, I went to bed. I was almost asleep when I felt the ground shift outside my window. Then I heard a bang on the wall outside, as if someone grabbed a big piece of wood and used it as a battering ram against the wall. I was so scared that something was going to bust through the window. I literally froze and had to tell myself to move and go upstairs. I told my cousins what happened, and they went back and looked around again. No tracks still. Even today, that night bothers me, and it was like 20 years ago. I think the fact that there were no traces in the snow, no footprints at all, does indicate that it was something supernatural. And that makes it more terrifying. Well, a different kind of terrifying, right? Humans still have a certain level of malevolence that can be within them that not most people, just a tiny percent of them, but those percent you have to be very careful of. And yeah, there probably are ways to mask your traces in snow. There are like boots that spread your weight across a larger area, almost like tennis rackets strapped to your feet or something like that. But you would still see some impression, leaning towards something supernatural. Case file 3211, written by Crimson Necrosis, The Breath in the Room. I was around 11 or so when my mom decided to leave me home alone while she, her roommate, and her roommate's grandkids went out for the evening. This was around 2003, 2004, give or take, and it was early on in my new exposure to being a preteen and being able to be alone at home, but it never made me nervous until this one particular evening. I had a PC that was capable of playing games I enjoyed at the time. I was minding my own business, playing games for a couple of hours, just enjoying myself, until out of nowhere, I felt a slight breath of air near my back right ear and heard the words, "Hey," clear as day. It was a male voice, but not one I knew, so I shot up and slammed into my desk in a panic. What I saw terrified the absolute crap out of me. It was nothing. Not a person, not an animal I could have mistaken for that. Just empty space and furniture. I stood there in shock, moving myself to my bed, which was in a corner. I grabbed my TV remote and watched Family Guy until my mom came home. To this day was the only time I was ever scared in that way. I don't really get frightened of stuff like that nowadays, but I still listen and question everything I hear from time to time. Case file 3212, written by CIA Napkin. Brilliant Blue Fear. I saw a ball of light in the middle of the woods, and I'm certain that it saw me too. The way it moved and hesitated as it got close, the indescribable feeling of utter fear. I never thought I could be so scared that I would ever be rooted to a spot. My mind recoiled at what I saw, the way the air seemed to move over it, the brilliant blue hue of the light. The way all of nature just turned off in an instant. No bugs, birds, or swaying branches, just silence. It felt like an hour that I stood there, staring at it, hovering 20 or so feet away. I could not shake the feeling that it was analyzing me, just as I was of it, and I just stood there ready to accept whatever came next. After a bit, the ball floated quickly back into the woods in the direction it came, faster than it had lulled out. I can still recall the way the light seemed to move with purpose, how it threw shadows in its quick retreat, and how the sound of the night seemed to just flick back on as if it were just on mute. I stood there thinking, "Go now, after it. You have to know what this is." But instead I ran away. I went back a few nights later and some nights after. I felt this compulsion to find and know, but I never saw it again. I didn't know if I really wanted to find it, or what would be the actual plan if I did, but to this day I can think of that moment years ago and still scare the crap out of myself. I love how this was written. It really conveys a sense of fear you experienced and something otherworldly, something beyond what we can understand. Was it a spirit? Was it an orb from an alien that was like a scanning device? I don't know, and I think it's probably a good thing you didn't go after it. Case file number 3213, written by Denver Louis. Pizza for the blind man. I used to deliver pizza for the Hut. I had a delivery to a normal house in the little neighborhood in the town I worked in. The man who came to the door was blind, so I helped him sign the receipt and went on my way. A few days later, I got an order to the furthest zone we delivered to. I lived in rural Texas, so it wasn't unusual to deliver out to people's remote properties and have to open gates and so on. Today, I'm packing up their order and the driver instructions say, "Open gate, don't let horses out, come all the way back." I do as it says. It's nighttime, probably around 10:30 or so. I pull up to a huge bonfire with all the men there. I had such a bad feeling as soon as I pulled up, I actually put this tactical knife my dad gave me in my pocket before I got out of the car. Anyways, I get out and walked up to the bonfire. This guy approaches me. He's fine and has signed the receipt. I can feel somebody staring at me and look over. It was like a creepy movie scene. The blind man is sitting directly across the fire from where I am standing, and he's sitting there just staring at me and smiling. I trade the pizzas for the signed receipt, and I go back to my car. I look out the window, and he is still just staring at me. His eyes had followed me back to my car, never left, obviously. I left and nothing happened, but something about it did not feel right. I had so many scary things happen to me while I worked there, actually. Case file number 3214, written by Dancing Fruit. Through the Charity Grounds. I used to work at a rundown public hospital, and the area built around it were bars, the red light district, old and new condos, and a mall. We're talking about city planning, where I'm from, and this is the largest charity hospital in the vicinity. Security was pretty bad too. We're talking about people getting shot in broad daylight next to the hospital. One late evening, after having drinks, I decided to walk home through the hospital grounds to get home. It's a huge maze, but it was safer than getting shanked on the street by random pickpockets or drunks at night. The most well-lit path, a few streetlights on, was along the orthopedic wards where cats would usually gather at night. I decided to walk through this path, as it led out to my condo nearby. So I walk along and the cats just start hiding. At first I thought, well, maybe I disturbed them, but one black cat followed me and kept blocking my path and kept looking at me, then something behind me. It just kept meowing and meowing as I was too weirded out to turn around and see what was there, so I just kept walking faster and faster. All the while, the black cat would just try to block me again and repeat the same behavior. Then I don't know why I just suddenly stood still when the cat meowed at me again as if asking me to stop. It stared a bit more behind me, and after a while, the black cat sat and licked its paws and didn't move. I decided to keep walking then, as if the cat had decided it was finally okay to let me go on my way. I lay awake that night for a bit, wondering what was behind me that night along the hospital path home. I doubt it was anything good. Case file 3215, written by D in the Wilderness. Something still hunts in Florida. We moved from New York to Florida in the early 90s and lived in rural central Florida. Horse country, basically. My dad was an avid hunter, and his family came from an agricultural background, and they basically lived in the middle of nowhere and were self-sustaining. Once my brother and I must have been 7 or 8 and my brother was 9, were out playing in a heavily wooded field area on the outside of the property. We often went back there to play when my dad was gardening. I remember once looking up and my father's head had popped up from gardening and he was staring extra long in our direction. We didn't pay any mind and went back to playing. Soon he was walking towards us cautiously and shouting for us to come towards him. He had his hunting rifle in his hand. He then started dashing towards us, screaming for us to come to him now, and discharged his rifle into the air. My brother and I ran towards my dad, and once we passed his line of sight, he shot at something that was behind us. I never saw what it was until later. A Florida panther had been stalking about behind us as we played in the field, and my dad had seen it from the gardening area. At first he thought it was some sheep or a small goat that might have gotten loose from our other fenced-in area. Luckily for him, he missed his shot because we found out later that they're endangered and it would have been a massive fine if he had killed it. My dad's second shot and shouts scared the feline and it ran up into a tree. My uncle, who lived next door on a neighboring farm property, came over and they kept it in the tree until a wildlife ranger came over to tranquilize it. I still remember seeing it up in the tree. They're such beautiful creatures. The second story. I used to work the late shift at work, so I often got home at like 12:30 a.m. to 1 a.m. We had sold the farm after I graduated high school and moved to a more urban area. I used to take a really dark road home where one side hugged a massive lake and the other side hugged a wooden swamp-like area. It was a long stretch of road where the speed limit was 65. I was young and had a nice V6 car with a fully custom kit on it, and I would speed late at night around the bends. That night I was probably going about 80 miles per hour and I had just passed the Central Florida Zoo. I looked down to put in a mix CD, way back when, this was like 2008. For a second, when I looked up, this massive black, wolf or feline-like creature dashed in front of my car and I hit it going 80 miles an hour. It cracked my body kit and the lights on the driver's side of the car. I hit it hard and it just bounded off into the woods. So it must have been like a side swipe. I pulled over and opened the door with my flashlight and a knife on my hip because I thought it must be dead. But when my flashlight searched from the safety of my car door, the side of the road, the ditch, the brush nearby, and saw no traces of it. I said "Fluck this" and got back into my car and drove home. I called my dad and said, "Man, I don't know what I hit, but it was big." And when he asked me what I thought it was, I was like, I think I hit a flucking chupacabra. To this day, I still don't know what it was I hit, but if you're a werewolf in the Central Florida area, and one night in the late 2000s a car hit you in the hip, my bad, bro. I'm just curious about something. If an endangered species threatens you or your children, and you have to just survive to protect yourself or your children, kill it or injure it, if it's endangered, do you still get fined or whatever? I mean, it seems, obviously you don't want to go hunting these species, but if they're attacking you, you don't really have a choice, right? Just an interesting thought. Never really thought about it before. Now time for the jokes of the day. Scientists tried to cross cheetah and crab genes together. Worried because it can go sideways very fast. Whoever invented penny for your thoughts and nickel and dime me to death sure knew how to coin a phrase. I telephoned a restaurant and asked if I could have a reservation for 2. The guy on the other end said I had the wrong number, so I asked him if I could make it for 4 instead. Why can't you hear a pterodactyl when it goes to the toilet? Because the P is silent. Doctor, alcohol is killing you slowly. Me, That's okay. I'm not in a hurry. Video up here, YouTube thinks you'll like it. Check it out. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.